بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فمن يعمل من الصالحات وهو مؤمن فلا كفران لسعيه وإنا له كاتبون وحرام على قرية أهلكناها فإنهم لا يرجعون حتى إذا فتحت يأجوج ومأجوج وهم من كل حدب ينسلون صدق الله العظيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. وبعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي آمين يا رب العالمين. الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone for all His favors that He has bestowed upon us. We seek His help and guidance and His protections from all trials and tribulations, in particular the trials and tribulations of the false Messiah, Masih al-Dajjal. The Prophet ﷺ used to pray in all his salat, or most of his salat, after the famous narration of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala, that was one day he woke up from his sleep, and the hadith which we'll mention in a few weeks inshallah. Brothers and sisters in Islam, it's really good to see you all here. Alhamdulillah, after last week's halaqah, which was really an extraordinary halaqah, a great halaqah by our guest speaker, Shaykh Fahim. And alhamdulillah, it's good to see you returning back to the masjid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I hope it's not Dajjal who has brought you here, but it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's fear who has brought you here, inshallah. Yes, this should be our intention, that our iman and our Islam is not dependent upon anyone else except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should have this fear of Him Jalla wa ala alone. Yeah, we shouldn't fear anything else or anyone else. Yeah, this is something which we should try to clear from the offset, before we begin this series about Al-Masih al-Dajjal, the false Messiah. We need to be clear in our minds that inshallah from today onwards, nothing will take us away from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the path of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. There's two fears cannot be combined in one heart. Yeah, only the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be accepted by Him Jalla wa ala. And the fear comes with hope and His mercy, of His forgiveness, of His help against all trials and tribulations. Having said that, brothers and sisters in Islam, my younger brothers as well who are here, keen to learn about this phenomenon or this person or this being which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through His Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has promised that He will send him towards the end of time in order to test His believing servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, this dunya, it is a test, it is a prison, it is outside, but it's also a prison when you look at it from a psychological point of view and also a spiritual point of view. Sijn can mean both bodily and also it can mean physically and also psychologically. In the next few weeks, inshallah, we will try to cover, it is a huge topic to cover. People have written books about it, scholars have written books about it. There are many hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But I ask you one question before we start, just to wake you up a little bit and to wake myself up. That is the Dajjal mentioned in the Quran? If anyone gets this right, I'll buy them a sweet next week, inshallah, next halaqah. Is the Dajjal mentioned in the Quran Al-Kareem?
No.
I am?
No.
It's not mentioned.
No.
Okay. What is mentioned in the Quran?
The Day of Judgment.
The Day of Judgment is mentioned, yes, many times. The Day of Judgment is repeated many times in the Holy Quran. Even from the outset, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the Day of Judgment will happen, without doubt. Now this is something you need to bear in mind when we study the topic of Dajjal and all the 10 signs of the Day of Judgment. There are 10 signs which we learn about from a young age. The major signs. And one of those major signs is, without doubt, Al-Masih al-Dajjal. There's another person called Al-Masih in the Quran as well. As you are probably aware of, he is Al-Masih Isa ibn Maryam. He's also called Masih. And there are many reasons. We discussed it in our Isa ibn Maryam series, that why is he called Al-Masih, and what were the miracles given to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the Prophet of God. Isa ibn Maryam, he was the Prophet of God, and he was given many miracles. Similarly, Al-Masih al-Dajjal, the false Messiah, he will appear both in his physical sense, and also the ulama, they mention, which I will go through in a few minutes, that what are the two period of times of Al-Masih al-Dajjal. But first, let's get one thing clear, that what does Dajjal mean? Dajjal or Dajjal is actually from the excessive form of Dajjal. And Dajjal means two, has anyone came across this word in their studies? Dajjal or Dajjala. Has anyone heard this word? Apart from the ulama who are sat here. Anyone else know what Dajjal means? No? Okay. I want you to think of someone, a person, or someone who you've seen in your life, or you heard of in your life, or even maybe a film that you have seen. We are not promoting our youngsters to watch films, etc. But one of the main reasons that many organizations, many scholars, many sort of masajid have taken upon themselves to talk about Dajjal is due to this series. Has anyone watched this series on Netflix?
Yeah.
And many of you have watched it, mashallah. Some of the brothers, alhamdulillah. So we have an expert on this series here. Brother Imran has watched some of it. So we have some brothers who have watched. I haven't watched it myself. Maybe if you have time after the series, we'll sit down and compare the two, analyze the two. But what I would say to the youngsters is, before you sit down and watch this series, or how many hours is it for the?
It's about 10 hours, 8
10
hours.
hours.
Yeah. It's 10 episodes.
So it's 10 episodes. So 10. If you have 10 hours spare in your life, don't watch it. Yeah, just keep away from it. Do something else. I will give you some of the references to read inshallah later on. But before going into the series, it's good to have some background so that you don't confuse yourself about this liar. So Dajjal or Dajjal means to trick people, to fraud people, to lie. There's so many words which you can describe. In Urdu we say farab, or you can say doka. There's so many things that you can say about him. But in a nutshell, just to understand him, he is somebody who you cannot trust, and somebody who you want to run away from, not go towards him, run away from him. Because once you run towards him, he will catch you, and he will make sure he gets hold of you and doesn't let you go. This is what the Prophet ﷺ has warned us in the hadith, which we will mention next week. But this week, I just want to have a quick introduction, 15, 20 minutes and half an hour, and then we will take it from here next week through the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So one thing is clear, he is not mentioned in the Quran. So someone might say to you, I don't want to believe in it. And some people are actually saying to the scholars, the ulama, that we don't think it's going to happen. We don't think Isa ibn Maryam is going to come back, So be careful. What do you say to them? How do you respond to them? If someone says to you or to us that whatever is in the Quran is enough for us, we don't want to believe in anything else.
There is no Islam without the Sunnah.
Okay.
I don't believe it.
Yes.
Quran is there, but Sunnah is not complete without the Sunnah.
The Quran is there. The Sunnah is there to explain the Quran. If we just believe on the Quran, we cannot pray. We cannot do the wudu. There's so many things which we cannot calculate the zakat, for instance. We cannot do our hajj. That means your Islam is empty. You have nothing left of the deen. So be careful. This is a fitna which the Prophet ﷺ told us in a hadith, that a time will come that people will say that this is the Quran, this is authentic, this is the book of Allah, and I'll only believe in this, nothing else. They are also misguided. Be aware of them. And I tell you one thing, this is also from the fitna of the Dajjal. These are the pre-trials of the Dajjal. He has many tricks under his sleeve. Some of them we will mention, some of them we will unable to mention today, because there are many things which he will do without us even realizing what he's doing to us. And one of the biggest things he's doing now, I tell you something, is he's separating wives and husbands left, right and center. We are dealing with cases on a phenomenal scale. Divorce rate, family breakdown. This is one of his tricks. He loves it. You might say to me, well, Imam, he's not even here. I'm going to explain that later on. What do I mean by his pre-trials or his trials before even he is born? But the Prophet ﷺ tells us in a hadith, which most of these hadith which we see, they are sahih in Muslim and Bukhari. So you cannot say that they are weak hadith for one. You cannot doubt the authenticity of Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim. And also, there's a full chapter. Does anyone know which chapter they are located? The hadith of Dajjal. Not Brother Manat, because he knows, but anyone else who doesn't know which chapter in Sahih al-Bukhari or Sahih al-Muslim you will find. This is for your own reference. When you go back, you can check them. Anyone. For this you will get a double prize. Yes, no, Mona Sahib, he knows. Mona Sahib, you are qualified. No. Anyone who's non-Mona, give them a hint, Mona Sahib. What letter does it start with?
Alif, Hamza.
Hamza, okay. And?
Ash.
Yeah, and then?
Ra.
Anyone has got it, no? I think it's said to
Ashratu Sa'a.
Ashratu Sa'a. So that is the key word you put in. These are the conditions or the signs of the Day of Judgment. And they are based in a bab called Kitab al-Fitan, the book of trials and tribulations towards the end of time. So for your own reference, to check them. And don't be scared, Don't be scared to pick up a book which has hadith in them. But what I would say to you is one thing you be careful on, and that is taking a hadith by its face value. What is written there is fine. There's two ways of understanding the hadith, either literally or metaphorically. So be careful, don't confuse yourself. And this is how the Prophet ﷺ taught his companions. This is from the eloquency of his speech. You will come across a hadith which we will go over next, is that how he describes the signs in order. And some of the signs you might think, well, that doesn't make sense. It might not make sense to us now, but when you go down 10, 15, 20 years down the line, they will start to make sense. As have some of the signs already in our time, which probably didn't make sense to the Sahaba, radiallahu ta'ala. They were thinking, what are these signs? How are we going to see this in our lives? And they didn't see them in their lives, but they came later on. There are different narrations regarding the major signs. There are some which mention 6, 7, but the famous ones are 10. And very, very quickly, because this is not a reminder regarding the signs of the Day of Judgment, because the Dajjal is one of them, I think it's good just to repeat them and to memorize them. One of the first ones that he mentions of the ayats in the narration by Muslim, he says that smoke will appear. The smoke will appear. And then also we have the Dajjal, which comes next, followed by the beast of the earth. And see, these things you can take metaphorically or literally. So both opinions are fine. So some scholars you will find them sort of trying to understand what does Dukhan mean. And they will have their opinion. It's fine, there's no problem with that, as long as they are in line with the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah. So don't condemn them. But why is he interpreting? This is a qualified role for the Imam, for the Muhaddith, the Imam of Hadith, to do this, and not for everyone, not for normal people, to delve into the different interpretations of the Hadith. And they mention the fourth one is the rising of the sun from the west. Yeah, also a sign. So that's been taken metaphorically and also physically, both, which are fine. And I say to you, just concentrate on the main ones, which are coming next. Isa ibn Maryam is one of the signs, as we mentioned. His descent, he will descend on this earth. This is a belief of the Muslims. There are some, even some Muslims, who will doubt this. But how can a prophet of God who has died, who hasn't died, in our belief he is still alive, come back? And what will be his role? For this we have discussed it a few weeks ago about his descent. What is the purpose behind it? Ya'juj, Ma'juj, is this mentioned in the Quran?
Yeah, Surah
Okay. Surah
Kahf.
Kahf, and also
Zulkarnain and
yes, all the stories of Dhul-Qarnayn, Kahf, Khidr, Musa. There's also one more place Ya'juj and Ma'juj is mentioned. Surah, where is Munasa? Al-Anbiya, towards the end. حَتَّى إِذَا فُتِحَتْ يَأْجُوجُ وَمَأْجُوجُ وَهُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ حَدَبٍ. And so some scholars have taken this literally, that this will be a nation who will run rampage over the earth. They will destroy everything. They will drink all the water. And some of the characteristics are also given. But again, this is the role for experts in the field. Those who understand the ahadith, they take all the ahadith together, and then they come with the judgment that this is what we think the Ya'juj or Ma'juj are. This is who they are. 3 earthquakes. Yeah? 3 major earthquakes. One in the east, one in the west, and one in Jaziratul Arab, in the Arabian Peninsula. 3 major earthquakes. We have many earthquakes happening at our times, but these are major earthquakes, big earthquakes, which will just destroy that whole area. And then the last one is the fire from Yemen. Yemen, we all know where Yemen is. It is a famous country in the south of the Arabian Peninsula. There will be a fire which will bring people out towards the hashr, towards accountability and the gathering of the Day of Judgment. So these are the 10 summarized versions that you will find in most of the books of the hadith. And it is very important to mention that once these signs appear, like Fir'aun wished that, I become a Muslim, it will have no effect. At this time when these signs start to appear, and Allah knows best which order they will appear in, how sudden they'll be, how much time they'll be. We do not know these things. They are not mentioned. There's mention about Isa ibn Maryam's time. But what we have to remember for us, brothers and sisters in Islam, is Iman will have no benefit at that time. That is the scary bit. That's what we should be scared about. As Fir'aun, when he was about to be drowned in the sea, he says, now I become a Muslim, I become submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, no, now this is not the time for you. You had plenty of time. How many years you had before this time in the sea to become a submissive servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have a hadith which mentions 3 things. 3 things, once they come out, your Iman has no avail. If you haven't become Muslim by then there is no chance, Allah knows, after that. And you have no benefit in the hereafter. One of them is the rising of the sun from the west, and one of them is the Dajjal himself. Once he starts to appear, then you need to run for your life, and you need to run for your Iman. You need to make sure that you're protected, both yourself and also your family. And the third one he mentioned, alayhi salatu wasalam, was the beast of the earth. The Prophet ﷺ told us something very, very important about himself, ﷺ, and the other prophets. That the other prophets, they have warned their nations or their people about Dajjal, but not as much detail as we have in Islam. So for that we should be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has made us Muslims, He has brought us into Islam. Allah knows what our great grandfathers were, which tribe we came from, but ultimately it is what we are now, it is important. Alhamdulillah, we are from the Ummati, we are one of the followers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have so much details. In Bukhari, Muslim, there are many hadith, over 50, some scholars they say, which are Sahih hadith, which will explain to you the fitness, the trials or tribulations of the Dajjal. And he says, the Prophet ﷺ tells us that between the first person on this earth, who was the first person on this earth? Adam. Are we sure? It wasn't any apes or someone like that, or
No, we don't.
or gorillas. Okay, Adam alayhi salam. Adam was chipmunks, anything. So we don't believe. We believe there was some evolution, but not what they're thinking, that we came from apes and monkeys and donkeys. So no, Adam was the first man created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Up to the Day of Judgment, there is nothing more severe than the trial of a Dajjal. There is nothing more severe from the first day to the last day than his appearance. And I mentioned to you the 2 appearances. We'll come to that towards the end. But I just want to give you some background. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us so much detail that only a blind person can walk away from this and not believing in what the Prophet ﷺ came with. And these people are called the deniers of not just the Dajjal, but deniers of hadith. We have this fitna amongst us presently, so be aware of them. The hadith, I will not mention all of them today because there are over 20 which he mentions in the book. I want to mention a few before going on to the main topic today, is that how do we understand, or how do we firstly recognize the fitans. That's today, and then next week we'll go a bit more into the fitnas themselves. What will they involve? How will he appear to us? Will he be in the human form, etc.? And how, lastly, in the last week, we will describe how do we protect ourselves. Is there a protection from Dajjal? Of course there is. Where there is a problem, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the solution. For everything. Subhanahu, everything in the Quran and the Sunnah, where there's a problem, the reason for having that problem there is for that there's a solution. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is well above everything. Scientists, they'll provide you with the problem, then they'll take years and years to find a solution. Now we have this coronavirus. No solution for it. What do we do? Oh, we are stuck. Yes?
Uncle, but my teacher told me that it's caused from bats.
Okay. Yeah, it must have come from somewhere. That's why there is no disease, there's no cure for it, there's no vaccination for it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He gives us a problem, He also gives us the solution. Sometimes we have to use our brains, we have to become together, we have to go back to the Quran and the Sunnah. But if somebody says to you, we don't believe, al-iyad billah, that the solution is there. We have solution for everything. Alhamdulillah, we have solution to how to live our lives as Muslims, how to live with the non-Muslims. We have it. We have a full constitution in our Quran. We have a way how to live as leaders of this world, how to be just people, how to be good Muslims. So don't ever believe what they're saying, that no, Islam is 1400 years old, come up to the new modern era. No, we don't want your modern era if it involves what you are doing at this time. We don't want none of that. We'd rather be stuck with the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam than come into what you are calling us towards. No, we don't want that. Alhamdulillah, we are satisfied, sadaqna wa amanna, with what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with. And this is a test. This is one of the tests that you're going to find. People will call you all sorts, that you are backwards, you are old-fashioned, you are fundamental, etc. These are all tests which you have to face with the solutions which will come in the last week, bi'idhnillahi wa ta'ala. One final hadith about the Dajjal, that the Prophet ﷺ told us through Abu Huraira, that I'm going to say something to you which no other Prophet has told his followers. Again, look at this hadith, both literally, I mean by the words, and also metaphorically. There's nothing wrong with that. You have freedom in that as long as you stay within the boundaries. That no Prophet came before me, and the Prophet ﷺ, he was a final Prophet, wasn't he? Is there a Prophet to come after him? No. This is also one of his fitnas, that he will bring people after Muhammad ﷺ, claiming to be prophets, Dajjaluna, Kadhabuna, 30 or more. It will come later in the hadith about how many false prophets will come and claim to be that we have come to revive, to renew this deen. You are still 1400 years ago. There's something called tajdeed, there's something called reviving the ummah, but it does not mean that we cancel what was revealed and we bring a new Quran al-iyad billah, or a new hadith. Yes, there are ways of implementing the Quran and the hadith, but not to cancel all that which was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ. He says to us, let me tell you something which the previous prophets did not tell their nation about Dajjal. What did he say?
About the description.
What was the description?
Of Dajjal,
One of them is?
One of these is got one floating eye.
Yeah, innahu a'war. That from one of the eyes is covered. He's blind in one eye, and your Rabb subhanahu wa ta'ala is not like that. So don't be deceived by him. Your Rabb subhanahu wa ta'ala sees you at all times. Yeah? And he will also, following that, he mentions in this hadith that not only is he a'war, he is blind, or he's, what do they call these pirates? They look like pirates when they have a patch on their
eye patch.
Yes.
Eye
Patch. So he won't have eye patch, but one of his eyes will be bulgy. It look like a grape. And one of the other eyes is also a bit dodgy, so be careful. Both his eyes are a bit, they're not 100%. So that's what gives us an indication that what you are seeing through his eyes will be also incorrect. This is a reference to his eyes. So he mentions further on, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and this is the scary bit really. This is something which we see a lot. He will come with Jannah, with fire and paradise, and hellfire. But what he is showing you to be hellfire will actually be
Jannah.
paradise. And what he's showing to be Jannah will be hellfire. Opposite. So what he's showing good will be bad, and what he's showing to be bad will be good. Now imagine this in your daily life, that when we read things, when we talk about things, do things appear as they are in our lives? Or do we always say, read between the lines, there is something behind it, make sure you look into it properly, don't trust this, don't trust that. He comes up with all these false information, mass media, false information, false flags. They're happening around us every time. And don't always believe what you hear on the news or on your WhatsApp group. Someone's passed away, someone's happened, this has happened, that happened. Don't believe. They are always trying to confuse the hell out of you. And they are trying to fill your mind with things which have no use in this world, especially no use for our Islam. So remember that. What looks good will be bad, and what looks bad will be good. So that's really in reference to the struggle that you will go through in your deen, in your Iman, in your religion. Yeah, so when you want to do something, and the shaitan will appear to you, this is difficult, why do you want to go to Salat al-Fajr, for instance? It's 7 o'clock, man. You need to go to sleep, have some rest. Or Dhuhr, it's middle of the day. What are you going to do? You're still young. When you get to 40, 50, then you can start praying, you can fast, you can do good. Or your parents, are old, but you can go and see them later on, it's no problem. All the things which you should be doing is putting you off them. Or study, don't study, man. Why do you want to become a Maulvi Sahib for? There's plenty of Maulvis in this world. Just become a normal person. Enjoy yourself, go to university, study, Lord Mikhail's constitution, and then it will have no benefit to you hereafter. But he tricks you. Waste your time, like spend 10 hours. Not saying that Brother Manan has wasted his 10 hours, but he's go through these things with you. That do such and such, and then it will be beneficial. So be careful. He's a trickster. There are some magicians which we see on telly. Can you name some of them? Because I've lost track of magicians on telly. Has anyone seen any latest? Who's the latest magician of our time? Yes, Brother Manan. He's not.
David Copperfield.
He's long time. He's gone now. He's past his sell-by date. He's gone. Who else is we have who's young? Dynamo. Okay. Imagine Dynamo, what he does. I know I've seen some of his series, many. He's actually from Bradford or somewhere. His parents are also thought to be Muslims. His father or someone, Allah knows best. Anyway, he walks on water. And some people say this is not true, it's only a trickster. But you imagine all these tricksters, all these magicians, put them all together, and I say multiply them by 1,000, 10,000. This is how much power the Dajjal will have. But don't forget, all these tricks that he's playing on you, there is somebody who's above him at all times. So don't let anyone put that doubt in your mind. This is what happens. One of the major causes of irtad, of moving away from Islam, or leaving Islam, is having these shubahat, these doubts. That how could it be that our Muslim brothers are being killed in Kashmir? Where's Allah? This is what they say. Where's Allah? Where is the Quran? These are all shubahat which you have to deal with in your life, and you have to deal them through the Quran, the Sunnah, and the prophecy of Muhammad sallallahu. He has prophesied all this. You need to take some time and read about it and understand it. That is really my key message for today. Is go sit down, pick up a book, a good Sahih book. Don't read these fairy tales. That this is going to happen, it's going to be good. No. Read the Sahih hadith which you will find in the references which I mentioned, and I will repeat them towards the end of the halaqah. Few more things before we quickly wrap up today's introduction. I want to go through, I'm not going to do any more hadith with you because there are many which I mentioned here. I just want to mention a few things. And brother mentioned the hadith about Tamim al-Dari. We'll tackle that next week, inshallah. We don't want to go into that at the moment. So, firstly, we should believe, and I hope that the last 10, 15, 20 minutes, it has allowed us to see this topic, this subject, with an open mind and with a commitment to prepare ourselves. It's not, I don't want you to have nightmares when you go to sleep. I'm really sorry if you get up at night, don't blame me that Imam said, just read A'udhu Billah and Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum, and don't do any bad dua against me. My intention is not to give you nightmares, but my intention is to prepare you for the eventuality. So we must have this belief that if the Prophet ﷺ says something and it is sahih, we believe it. Yes, we believe in the Quran and also we believe in the Sunnah of Rasulullah ﷺ. So there are many nusus which I mentioned of the akhbar, mutawatira. They're not just ahad, they're just not one narration. There are many multiple narrations which are mentioned in the books of hadith. Also we should believe that what the Prophet ﷺ commanded us to do, there must be some good in it. What he has forbade us not to do, there must be some good in it. Yeah? The Prophet ﷺ told us to eat certain food. I want to come back to coronavirus now. And don't eat such other foods. There is hikmah in that. He told us to eat the lamb, the sheep, the cattle, this, that, but not to eat other things. Yeah? So this is something which we should be thankful for, that he has given us a way to live our lives, and not just to eat anything that's breathing and just slaughter it. No, we have conditions, we have a way, we have a sharia, which sharia means, sharia does not mean cutting the hands of people. Yeah, sharia means a way how to live your life. Sharia, you know what of sharia? Sharia so and so, it's a way, it's a tariq, it's somewhere where we will take that path towards the obedience of Allah. So sharia does not mean cutting the neck. And this is one of the rules of sharia, but it does not mean that that's all we do. Like, for instance, we had children who came here and they thought that we had a dungeon downstairs. I said, well, you go downstairs yourself and check. So we took them downstairs. They had a look, oh, it's so nice, it's clean. I said, this is what we do. We pray here, we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all these myths that they have in their minds, it is upon all of us, in particular those who are in school, to speak to your friends, speak to your relations who are there and who have some doubts regarding our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam first, and also regarding the religion of Islam. So the third thing, and I'm only going to be another 5 minutes, and then we'll take some questions. The third thing is, what did I mention in the beginning? And this is something which might not make sense in the beginning, when we speak about it now, but have a think about it, about the two times in which he will be present. The first one is, anyone remember? Yes, I am.
End of the world.
Yeah, so he is one of the major signs, yeah, without doubt, but we were talking just before that, just prior to that.
Imam Mahdi will be in.
Yeah, that's
there will be a big battle going on at the moment, yeah.
Before that, let's go before that. Let's rewind 10, 20, 30 years. Allah knows best how long. But there are also what we call in the fiqh, we call the prerequisites, or the conditions, or what leads to his birth. He's going to be born. What leads to his upbringing? Will he be a Muslim, Christian? What will he be? What are we saying? He will be born as a Jew. Yeah. So there's no ikhtilaf. We shouldn't worry about upsetting anyone, because they are also waiting for him to come. So you're actually making them happy. Oh, you believe that he'll be a Jew? Oh, alhamdulillah. So they'll be happy for you. So we say to the Jews who are coming to the masjid, this is something we talk about sometimes in our discussion, and they're quite happy. They don't see this as a problem or as something which is looking down upon us. They are happy about it. Yeah, so they think he is one of the savior, because they disbelieved in who? Who did they disbelieve in? And they Isa. So they disbelieve in his nubuwah, and they tried to kill him, and they put him on the cross, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took him away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never allow his prophet, his messenger, to be killed by his enemies. Then you might ask me, what about Yahya alayhi salam? Why was he killed? Because he was not a messenger. He was a prophet, but ma kana rasul.
He wasn't Rasul.
Rasul, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never let his Rasul like our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu. How many times did they try to kill him? the Qurayshis. They threw things on his back. And then they eventually plotted before the Hijrah that we're going to send, each tribe will send one of their heroes to try and kill Nabi sallallahu, but they failed. So never will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, allow his Rasul, his messenger, to be taken by the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the fitna of Dajjal, I'm going to just quickly go through this, are two types, as described by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The first one is what has been described in the hadith of his characteristics, that he will have one eye will be covered, he will have kafir written on his forehead. These are all descriptions which we'll do next week. But there's also something which has been described to us by the Prophet ﷺ, which will come before him. Now what do I mean by that? They will be there, present, before even his arrival. Has anyone watched the series Arrivals? The Arrivals, called Arrivals of, it was actually in Urdu and also English. I forgot the name. It was very interesting series that was done by a Muslim. And in that they describe more of the trials prior to his appearance. Now the first type we have,
it will be very much famine, on the earth before his nuzul. I mean, it's going to be hunger around.
That's
that's really the main sign. Yeah.
That's the second type, which brother is correct. That what will be the environment at that time? What will be the situation of the world at that time? And that's what we mean by his pre-appearance. The second time, which we have many description about, is his actual appearance. How he will look? What will he do? The trial which he will present you with are many, which we'll go through next week. I'm not going to go through them today because there are so many to go through. But the first time which we have been described by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has actually shown us a way to protect ourselves for these fitans. For the second time, we need a bit more explanation. Like the brother mentioned, we need to describe a little bit more and prepare ourselves mentally for the trials and for the fitans. Even though they are from the signs of Ashat Sa'ah, we need to really study them carefully and also make sure that they are in line with the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu. Because there are many fairy tales out there about Dajjal, which you probably are aware of. Many false stories regarding him, that he will do this, he will do that. So we need to try to be careful what we believe in and what we reject because of like the brother mentioned, because of authenticity, or because there are other problems with the narrations of the hadith, or the narrator, or there is some shak, there is some doubt that this might be from the previous nations, from the sayings of the Bani Israel, or even, the Christians don't have a lot on Dajjal. They call him the Antichrist, or they have some other names for him, for Dajjal. Masih is called in Masih, they call him in Hebrew, in the Jews, but as Muslims, he is known to be Al-Masih Al-Dajjal. So the second type, we will try to be a bit more careful when we describe them. It needs a bit more clarity, which we will do that in the second week with Allah Ta'ala. The final thing is, I want all of you to go from here today, is to recap what I said in the beginning, and really to have this firm sort of commitment in your mind, in yourself, in your children, that you will make all the effort to firstly look for the truth in the Quran, in the Sunnah, and also something that you will keep at all times. You will practice the dua of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam at the end of your salat. And this dua is a famous dua. Allahumma inna na'udhu bika min fitnati al-mahya wal mamat. Oh Allah, I seek protection from the trials of life and death. Life and death has trials. Allahumma inna na'udhu bika min fitnati al-masih al-dajjal. I also seek protection from the trials and tribulations of the false Messiah. Because what the Prophet ﷺ, his practice after this ru'ya, or this dream, or whatever you want to call it, it's ilham by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was really worried for his ummah. And he was worried to such an extent that every salah he used to say this. And he encouraged, I hardly hear, us or the ulamas or the imams encouraging the congregation to say this dua. And from his tricks, guess what one of his tricks will be? Any idea? People, yes, I am.
Stop dua.
Dua, yes, I agree with you. That's one of the things which is, the dua is increasing. We have it in our mind that dua is bid'ah. When the Prophet ﷺ says that there is a way to make dua, there are etiquettes of dua, but don't restrict dua. Once you restrict dua, you are restricting a big proportion of our religion. The Prophet ﷺ used to make dua at all times. After the prayer, before the prayer, if somebody used to pass away, he used to raise his arms up, make dua. Even in the cemetery, he used to face the qibla and make dua. So don't restrict the dua at any time. Try to do dua as much as you can, because this is really the center, this is the core of our religion. The other religion, they don't do dua. You know what they do? They sing. They go and even in funerals they start singing. I was watching a video a few days ago. They were actually, I think it was a Christian, and they were celebrating his 101 or 102 years of age, and they were singing, and they were Christians, they're not Muslims, alhamdulillah, so we're okay. But I just go, just do some dua for the person. Alhamdulillah, he's lived 101 years. You should be thankful for that. It doesn't mean that you make a big hoo-ha about it. So we are good at doing, making a scene of things, but we are really losing this, which is the dua. The thing which I was looking for is, he's such a fraudy that he will make people forget about him. Dajjal, what do you want to know about Dajjal? You're going to have nightmares, you're going to not sleep at night. When he comes, we'll deal with him. But when he comes, it will be too late. You cannot deal with him. When he comes, his fitans will be so great, and the powers which he has been given by who? By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be so great that even the strongest of mu'min or Muslim will find it difficult. And then he will wish, as the hadith mentions, I mentioned this many times, and sometimes it doesn't click that, what does this hadith mean, that a person will be passing by a grave and he will wish to be in his place. Tamanna lil maut. It is not allowed to seek death. But Allah, you say to, oh Allah, if life is better for me, allow me to live. If death is better for me, allow me to leave this dunya while you are pleased with me. So people do have trials in their life and tests. We advise them, brother or sister, don't wish for death. I wish I was gone, I wish I was gone. This is the life that you have been given. It is an amana, it is a precious responsibility, it is precious trust upon you. You must look after it. You must look after this body which He has given to you. Jalla wa. I want to finish off very, very quickly because the time is running. The ru'ya as-salihah from the Prophet ﷺ is haqq, it is yaqeen, something which we believe in. And as I mentioned, the warnings of the prophets before him is also a hujjah, a proof that Dajjal is there and he will come. That is the hadith we'll mention next week, that how do we bring the hadiths together, because when you look at the topic, don't just pick one or two hadith. Try to bring all of it together, analyze it, and then you will come to some clarity. And inshallah your chest will open with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with His the knowledge which you will be given with His help. And He mentions, this is going 30, 40 years ago, that there will be people who will discredit it, but be aware of them, because that's also one of the trials of the Masih ad-Dajjal. Then he goes into political Islam, which I don't want to go into at this time. Maybe in the last week I will just go very, very briefly that what effect it has had upon us as Muslims, that we have been split into different sects. We have no leader. This is political Islam, which is nothing wrong with it. Don't think Islam is just about praying in namaz and zakat. We have to be active. When we hear the term activist, we get scared that these guys are going to go crazy, they're going to start striking and going on strike. I know some priests who actually go to London and they protest against environmental issues. Christians, we are Muslims. If they have come out of that shell, we must have been giving this ni'mah by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, istikhlaf fil ard. We are the representatives of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we'll go into politics later on. I want to finish off on this last point, which we mentioned. Very interesting. Palestine has a lot to do with Dajjal. Bayt al-Maqdis has a lot to do with Dajjal. But we'll clarify this issue. And inshallah, once you try to understand these issues regarding Palestine and Israel, and Yahud, and what's happening towards the end of time, inshallah, your chest will become broader. You will not just sit back and accept everything, but you will actually become more of an active believer, not a passive believer. I mean, do we want to be passive believers? Do you just want to be boring and just sitting at home watching Netflix and that's, oh, I believe what he's saying? Even though most of what he's saying is probably incorrect. Or do we want to be active believers? That you want to leave this dunya and you have done something good. People will remember you only in the good. And also if you've done some bad as well, then remember this person, he used to be a robber, he used to be a this, that. But you want people to remember you with good words. And that is really, I've summarized the point that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given all of us a chance to do something positive in our lives. You might think, Rochdale, what can I do? It's a small town. No, there's a lot you can do. Alhamdulillah, Rochdale has potential. The whole of the UK has potential. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His mercy, has brought us here for a reason. Our ancestors, as I said, Allah knows what they were, whether they were Hindus, whether they were Buddhists. Our ancestors might have been from the Bani Israel. Allah knows best, but we have to be thankful of what we are now and what we can do later on in the next 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. We might not see the Dajjal, and we hope we don't see him. We make dua, we don't see him. We don't want to see him. Don't make dua that Allah prolong my life so I can see this character. We don't want to see him. We'd actually rather be gone before he arrives into this world. So we don't make this dua. Sometimes the youngsters, they say, oh, I want to be alive at his time. We say, no, you don't want to be alive at his time, because your iman is in danger, your Islam is in danger. So next week, we'll carry on with the various characteristics of the Dajjal. And I hope and I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala benefits us with something today, and He allows us to leave this majma', this gathering of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with some understanding of this topic, and also the other topics which are connected to them, the 10 ayahs, the 10 signs, and go home and ponder upon them, do your research, look into the books of our hadith. If you're not sure, ask your teachers, ask your parents, ask who, and فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ. Ahl al-dhikr are those who have read, those who have studied. Keep away from shubuhat and doubts and fairy tales of the past, and stick to the core, which is the Sahih Hadith and the guidance of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Have a worry in your heart and have a concern in your heart, but don't let that distract you from the main purpose of, I see some brothers, they get so, bogged down with that is doomsday is coming. They'll start building villages away in the countries. There was one person who was found, a Christian, he locked himself up for 20 years. This is not the way of Muslims. We are not Rahbaniyun. We are people who face the problems of the society. We don't hide away from the problems. And this is what Allah has told us. This is what the Prophet ﷺ has told us. And even if there's a split second left for the Qiyamah, what did he say? Plant your seed or do whatever you do. Finish it off. Whatever you are doing, finish your work off, and then let the Qiyamah come. Don't think, people in the time of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, when Iraq was ransacked and when it was destroyed, people thought that, that is it. It is the end of time. And he told them, don't have these ideas in your mind. Rather go back and prepare. And we know about the preparation that he went back. He wasn't just a scholar, he was a mujahid fi sabil. He also went back and he prepared the army to retake Iraq, Basra, and all the areas which were taken by the invaders of that time. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enlighten us with His knowledge, and He allow us to see the truth as true, and may He allow us to see the falsehood as false, and may He keep us safe from the trials and tribulations of the Masih ad-Dajjal, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us strong Muslims. We need to be strong Muslims, strong mu'min. We need to be confident in our Islam, that the Islam is the truth. Don't have these doubts. Don't let the shaitan put these doubts. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protection from the doubts and the waswas of the shayateen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He give us the ability to recite the ayahs which will give us protection at all times, in the morning, in the evening, and only with his help will we be able to face the fata'in or the fitnas of the Dajjal and those other fitnas which will come. Inshallah, if there's any questions from the sisters or from the brothers, we will take a few questions. After that, inshallah, we'll have a concluding الدعاء. أقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.